Neutral is a place of no movement. It means you're not making progress towards the goals or the ideas that are really important to you. Welcome to Beyond Neutral, where we talk about what gets you stuck and how we can shift and navigate the road forward. As leaders, as professionals in our careers, or just balancing and creating the kind of life you desire. I'm your host, Paula Reed. Welcome to the podcast. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Season 2 for Beyond Neutral. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited you're here. So I have a topic that I want to talk about today and kind of circle back to it a couple times over the next few episodes, because I think it's a really important concept that kind of is underlying to a lot of the things and a lot of the discussions that I end up having with coaching clients and also with search clients who are managing their career. And the concept that I want to talk about today is about agency, the concept of having agency. So, what is that? Agency is an imperative in living the kind of life that you desire. It's a pillar of leadership. It is critical for good emotional health and for positive relationships. So what does it really mean? In a nutshell, agency is really about owning and recognizing that you have a sense of control over your life, over your thoughts, over your emotions, your behaviors, and most importantly, your actions, because agency is really in a big way about action. It is about recognizing your capacity to take action, and you name it, to influence whatever it is, to influence your life, to influence your career, to influence your relationships, that you have the capacity to have a level of control over yourself in those situations, right? We can't control other people. We can't control things that come along, but what we can control is ourselves and our actions and our attitudes that can have and do have a significant impact on the situations that we're in. So to believe you have agency, one of the things you're really doing is you're placing your focus on your actions, be that internal or external. And how you see things can be as effective as what you do. It's about controlling how you really experience something and how you deal with it. I tell this story, and if I wrote a blog about this a year or two ago, and telling this story about a realization that I had, and this is a light little story that is relevant to the concept of agency. But I tell this story about I realized when my kids were little, every single time we packed to go on vacation, I shouldn't say we pack. I packed to go on vacation for my kids and myself. I would be a lunatic. And honestly, a lunatic. Like I got in this really bad mood. I got very anxious, like huge anxiety around it. And I didn't really understand where this was coming from. But it inevitably, like it brought out the absolute beast in me. And I tell the story that I realized one day as I was packing and I'm in a bad mood, I just all of a sudden paused. I took this neutral place, right? Where I paused and thought, why am I like this? And I did realize that where it came from was when I was a kid, I was the youngest of 7. I've mentioned that before. And my parents used to take us camping. 7 kids, they would take camping, if you can imagine it, and sometimes for 2 weeks. And that process of getting ready to go camping was so unbelievably painful because my father had tremendous anxiety over it, which I would have tremendous anxiety over packing 7 kids to go camping. But it would be like this, the process of getting the car packed. We had this big blue van, and I actually have a picture of this on a blog post that I have. We had this big blue van. There were 7 of us. And he would be packing the tent and the cooler, and he would be running around like a lunatic. And if he put something down and you picked it up, he'd go, "Why are you touching that? Leave that there. I put that there because I want it." And the anxiety level in our house went from like 0 to 100 in a moment. And as I got older, like I would talk with my brothers and sisters and we would laugh about like what that experience was. But I can remember in the time it was like you just wanted to stand there and not do anything to upset that process in any way because it was so incredibly stressful. First getting packed, then it would be fine when we were driving there. It would be fun and we'd be laughing and all would be forgotten. Then we would get to the campsite and then the process of setting up the camp and setting up the kitchen and doing all of that, it all just came up again. And eventually we had lovely times on vacation, but the process of getting there was incredibly stressful. So this was how I learned to basically go on vacation, right? Is to be like a nutcase with my family getting ready to go. And so when I realized that, all of a sudden I had to pause. And one of the things to help you have agency in a situation is to kind of loosen the story you're invested in, right? And so unknowingly, I was invested in this story that packing for vacation has to be a stressful, crazy time. When I loosened that story and said, well, does it really have to be, or is that just one of the experiences that became so prominent in my mind, right? And I had to kind of sit back and say, well, what if it wasn't that? And I had to start retelling myself the story about what packing for vacation could look like and what preparing to go could look like. And once I kind of loosened that story, I now I now could experience it differently. But in order to loosen that story, I had to first take responsibility for realizing I had to have agency around the fact that I was seeing something that way that I didn't necessarily have to see that way. I was behaving in a way that wasn't critical to the situation. Okay. I was interpreting what I was in a way that was creating behaviors that really weren't serving me. So having agency is about stepping into the recognition that you have a choice, you have options, you can control this, you have some control over the way you are experiencing a particular situation. And once I was able to do that, packing became and getting ready for vacation became a very different experience for me and for my family. So that's just kind of a light situation, but you can think about it, in a leadership situation. You can think about it in a parenting situation. You can think about it in relationships. What is it that you need to do to own your part in a situation, own where you are and where you want it to be? Really thinking about the actions or the behaviors or the thoughts that you have complete control over in impacting a situation. And so sometimes, like when we talk about our careers, okay, or we talk about, and I've had enough conversations with candidates and clients who talk about, well, I'm in this situation and my boss, and I'll often ask the question, well, how do you want to change that? What actions do you want to take in order to make that different? What are you willing to do in order to change the trajectory of that situation? And so it's very important to sit back and realize, have agency that you are in the position, you're the driver of this car, right? You are in a position to be able to impact that. Because one of the things to think about is that the opposite of agency is resignation. It's being a victim, right? It's just allowing things to just happen to you and having no voice in what's next, no voice in how you're experiencing it, no voice in what it means to who you are or who you want to be or where you're going. Okay. This is an absolute pillar, as I said earlier on, of good emotional health, positive relationship. It's a pillar of leadership because if you're going to be a leader, you have to believe that you can take actions, you can have words, you can have ideas that can influence other people and can influence the situation that you're in. And if you don't have agency, you can't lead. It's not possible because people don't follow victims. They follow people who have a belief in their ability to impact the future, to impact outcomes. That's who people follow. So agency is a really, really critical thing. And there's all kinds of things that can get in the way of our feeling that. And in some upcoming episodes over the next month, I want to talk about some of those things and really focus in on what they are, what the stories are we tell ourselves around those, like, the camping trip. I mean, that's a light one, but what are those stories? And how do we have, loosen those or move those in order to have far more agency and far more impact over where we're going and how we're getting there? So that's the story of the day today. The word of the day is agency. I hope that you found that helpful and insightful, and there'll be more to come on this. So thanks so much for joining us today on Beyond Neutral. And I look forward to talking further. Have a great one. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Beyond Neutral. Make sure to visit our website, www.reidandco.com, for this week's show notes. That's reidnco.com. And if you found value in today's episode, I would really appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts, or better yet, share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. All of this helps to support the show. Thanks so much. Take care.